Hello and welcome to Lightways at Life Astrologer with me, Anna Isabel. And I'm very pleased to welcome my guest today, who is Carmen Turner-Schott. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Oh, I am very happy because I am holding your book here, which is called Sun Signs, Houses, and Healing. And I guess what I really like about it is that it's a very easy book for someone who has very little knowledge of astrology to pick up and get a nice understanding of what the signs are, what they mean, what the planets signify.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that you use this to encourage healing. Tell us about what led you to have this idea.
Yes. Well, for many years now, I have been really putting a lot of research and effort into the 8th and 12th astrological houses. That's kind of been my passion. Having planets in those two houses throughout my life, I've learned a lot of different lessons and wisdom from the struggles I've had and with clients, in my counseling profession, and then working with astrology clients since I've been doing charts since I was about 19 years old. I've been collecting research and I wanted to write a book for 8th and 12th house people. And I decided to expand that and look at healing and resiliency and strength. What traits can help each sun sign, not just the 8th and 12th house folks, but everyone out there that might not have a great understanding of their chart. I wanted to make it basic for anyone to understand.
Yes, and I can see you've got company there.
Yes, I'm trying to get her to quiet. It's my Rosie.
Well, I understand, given that I've got one lying on the floor here as well, so thankfully quietly. Well,
I might have to get up and move her ball here in a little bit, but I'm here.
Yes, I like that. I like the accessibility. Ultimately, I think that's what I'm getting at, is that I like the accessibility. And I think that we as astrologers sometimes, after practicing for so many years, forget how it's the signs themselves that are the doorway into astrology.
Yes.
Because we get so used to weaving and knitting everything together that we forget that for most people, they only know their sun sign, and that actually that's the doorway. It's the doorway through which all get to astrology. So it's a very nice introduction, as I say. And I like that each of the signs has tips for healing. And it did tickle me when I got to Virgo and it said, what helps you control obsessive thoughts? So it's very nice in a sense, because you really thought out for each of the signs, where are the strengths and where are the weaknesses. So perhaps you could give us a little flavor of that, maybe through each of the signs, what you feel.
Sure. So, as I'll start with the first sign, Aries. Aries are brave, courageous, straightforward, blunt. They like to share what they think and feel. They're very impulsive. That is a strength, but it can also be a weakness, that can get them into some trouble when they don't have that patience to wait and really, before they make decisions they might regret. So that's kind of how I explain Aries. Taurus, I love Taurus. Taurus is so, practical and stable. They like comfort and security, but all of that can also prevent them from taking risks and moving forward in life and doing things that might be a little scary that actually might benefit them to get them out of their rut they can be a little bit strong-willed and stubborn, and have a hard time listening to other people's advice once they make their mind up. So opening up to other people, listening to what people share with them, and really taking that into heart, I think helps them in their life in a lot of ways. And then Geminis are, friendly and social and intelligent and happy and really, funny, but they can be restless and they can feel alone if they don't have deep conversations with other people. So I'm going to grab my dog 1 second. I'm back. We'll see if that works. I had to hide her ball. She only does this when I'm on the phone. She's jealous. She's a little Cancer dog. So anyway, but with Gemini, I think that they have a difficult time with self-care and with grounding themselves because their energy is so restless and they're always thinking. It's hard to still their mind. So their self-care activities are different. In the book I describe, they need activity. They need mental stimulation, that conversation with people that are like them and shared hobbies and interests, and getting outdoors and getting moving, I think really help them. They might have more difficulty sitting still and meditating and doing nothing, and stilling their mind might be hard for them. So I try to share that throughout the book, how each sign has, different strengths and things that benefit them with self-care. So Gemini, Cancers, I love Cancers. My grandmother was a Cancer, so nurturing, so sensitive, protective and loyal, but also a little bit controlling, a little bit cautious about, letting people into their inner circle. Also kind of, like to hide in the home. My husband's a Cancer moon, so he's a homebody. And I know a lot of Cancers just like to be home with one or two of their friends and family or their pet. So taking more risk and learning to trust people and not get their feelings hurt if people don't treat them the way they would treat others is kind of a strength Cancers can learn, that not everyone's going to be as nurturing and motherly as them, but also trusting their intuition because they're so intuitive, being ruled by the moon, really listening to their gut instincts and their inner voice is important for Cancers, and building that self-esteem, to trust themselves. And so Leos, of course, we know Leos are, the life of the party. I love Leos. They're charismatic, they're friendly, they have all of these talents, but and they have a lot of artistic talents and things that happen to them that they're good at crisis and being a leader and like to be in charge. But sometimes they think that they know best and they don't always listen to others or pay attention to what other people's needs are, because it's all about them being in the limelight, them getting recognition. So letting their coworkers and others get recognition. I talk a little bit about that in the book. So a lot of the signs I give examples of are people in my own life, at work, people that I've known in my family. So in Virgo, I'm a Virgo sun. My daughter's a Virgo. My husband's a Virgo. And so I live that every day of my life. And when I first started studying astrology, it just, my sun sign explained myself so well. When I was 16, I'm like, there's something to this. And that's kind of what got me loving astrology and teaching it to myself and doing it throughout my life. I love it. It's been very accurate. And it helped me understand, wow, I obsess and I analyze everything. And that can be a benefit, in some career fields, but it also can hurt me emotionally, and it can make it where I have trouble sleeping, I have trouble relaxing, and always have to be feeling like I'm doing something. So I've learned to be more relaxed and to try to control those negative thoughts or those worries. And of course, the brain and stomach connection. A lot of Virgos get that stomach issues, their stomach hurts, digestive issues, because they get stressed or worried. My daughter's doing this right now. She's actually in Europe right now on a school trip, and her stomach has been messed up the whole time, and she's worried about all these things that she can't control. And I'm like, just let it go, just have fun, and I'm trying to tell her as another Virgo, but she's still, it's in my mind. She said, I know, just let it go and try to get some sleep and have fun. But it can be hard for Virgos. But, Virgos love to help others. So, helping other people gets them out of their head, gets them out of their own problems, which is really a strength for them to serve others in some way and take care of people and their family. And then, Libras, I love Libras, they're the sign that rules relationships. So, having a partner and having people around them is very important. But Libras also need to learn that they can be alone. And it's okay not to have a relationship. It's okay not to have a partner. So I kind of talk about that in the book as well. And, one of their biggest weaknesses, it's hard for them to make decisions and because they don't want to offend anyone, and they always see both sides of the issue. So I try to give some tips for Libras it's okay to make decisions and to make choices and discuss with people, and they can speak up for themselves more and things like that. And then Scorpio, of course, is, the strong, intuitive, psychic person, and they have power. I mean, they rule rebirth, regeneration. They're naturally strong people. I believe Scorpios are, and sometimes they just protect themselves so much and they don't allow themselves to be vulnerable. And so I think it's so important for them to be more sensitive and open and allow themselves to cry or to trust others is huge for Scorpio, because they don't trust very many people. And when they do, they still kind of hide, they're secretive and they like to appear strong and in control. But once you get their trust and loyalty, they're very devoted and loyal and protective of their loved ones and friends. So I love Scorpios. I have a lot of them in my life, but you always feel like you don't really know what they're thinking or feeling because they're so private, and they rule the 8th house, which is all about secrets and hidden things. And they tend to go through a lot of more traumatic experiences than other signs from a young age. Their sign rules death. I find that a lot of them are affected and impacted by death at a young age. So I talk a little bit about that in the book as well. They just have an awareness that life is fragile and that things can happen, and that most signs might not even think about. They think about those deep, dark, mystical things. And then Sagittarius, I have so many Sagittarians in my life, and I don't know why I attract them, but they're fun, they're joyful. My mother's a Sag, a couple of my friends, they're very spiritual. They love to travel. They love adventure. They love to just, have the wind in their hair and be around people. And they're smart, and they do like to help people too. They have a good energy about them. They are a little bit restless. So learning to settle down and to calm themselves and relax is important for Sagittarius, because they're always on the go. They're kind of like that Gemini, the polar opposite. They're both very go, restless kinds of folks. So I love Sagittarius. Getting out there and traveling, doing things is good for them. And then Capricorn. I have a lot of Capricorns in my life. My dad, my grandfather, my brother, my best friend are all Capricorn. And, I see how serious they are, and they have a very witty, funny sense of humor, but they also take on a lot of burdens and a lot of responsibility, mentally, emotionally, for being successful or being able to provide for their loved ones. And they can just get to where they don't enjoy life and they need to have fun. So Capricorns, I kind of advise in the book, they need to have fun, do things that are lighthearted, go see a funny movie, go on a trip, get away from work, take that vacation, because they can be workaholics. Capricorns can. And so I give some tips on that, to have a good work-life balance and, with everything, and not make their career their life, which many do, because that's their natural, energy is to work. And so then we have Aquarius, which, I have a few Aquarians I've known through the years. That's the one sign that has always been hard for me to figure out. I know that air energy, but it's so hard to write about Aquarius. That was the one chapter in the book that I'm like, okay, I'm going to get into this Aquarius, right? And really feel what it's like to be one, and the people I've known to bring it to life. But Aquarians are just unique. They can have a practical side, a very traditional side, then they can have a very rebellious side that is, against tradition and likes to shock people and be different and unique and creative and eccentric. And they're intelligent, they're innovative and all of these things. But tying them down and having a committed relationship can be difficult for them because they love having many acquaintances and friends, but they want their freedom, and they like that freedom. I find that a lot of people that remain single that I meet later in life, like they're in their 50s and 60s, never married, are Aquarians. And that's been kind of my experience. And they're like, I don't need to marry. I can just have, a relationship, or I can live with someone, but I don't want to be tied down, because what if I want to get up and go somewhere? They're very free spirit, and they like being open-minded. They don't like for people, to be treated wrong, and for people's rights to be gone. Very into human rights and humanitarian causes, helping large groups of people. So they're helpers, but they do it in an intellectual way. So I love it how they can detach and really help people, and they don't take on other people's problems like Virgo or some of these other signs do. So I think that's a strength they have. And then Pisces, it's one of my favorites, my polar opposite. I love Pisces, compassionate, artistic, creative, just very sensitive and kind. I've never met a Pisces that wasn't kind and artistic. They're either play an instrument, they can draw, paint, just love to help people in the helping professions, counselors, give great advice, spiritual, very spiritual people. But the one thing they lack are boundaries, because they're ruled by Neptune, so they're wide open. And I find that Pisces often get hurt. They get their feelings hurt very easily because they're so trusting, and they see the good in people. They see with those rose-colored glasses on, which is similar to 12th house people that have planets in the 12th house. They do similar energy. They want to help people. They see the good, and they don't always see what's in front of them, because they're a little bit idealistic. So I give them some tips as well to learn boundaries, and it's okay to tell people no. And it's not being mean. They need to take care of themselves first before they give to everyone else. And that's kind of my tips for Pisces. So those are kind of a quick rundown on the 12. I hope I answered your question a little bit, but you can pick my brain some more if you want to. But
yeah, no, I think that was a nice little summary. I think essentially what your book does is it says, okay, here are the strengths, and here are the weaknesses for each of the signs.
Yeah.
And here are some ideas to address those weaknesses. And I think that's a very noble effort, actually. One of the things that you have also is you have affirmations for each of the signs. And again, the one that really tickled me when I saw it for Virgo was, my outlook is optimistic.
Yes. Yes.
The reason I picked that one is because, to me, it's a really good example of how you are seeking to address the weaknesses of each of the signs. Yes. And so we can have a little giggle about it, but yeah. It's actually exactly what Virgo needs. It's yes. to develop a little bit more optimism about how things are going to be. Yes. When you were writing the affirmations, was there one sign that kind of stuck in your mind, that you remember vividly?
Yeah, I would say probably Virgo, because that's, I live with a lot of Virgos, and being one, I see how, they're very sarcastic and realists. So they, they're like, don't sugarcoat it. That's not what's going to happen. That this is what's going to happen. They really look at the practical side of things, and sometimes having faith and hope and more of a positive outlook is difficult for them, because they are earth sign. They are very practical and realistic. And they, if it's like, oh, just think positive thoughts, and they're like, oh yeah, they'll kind of laugh at you, and my daughter does it to me. She's like, it's just so goofy, no, that's not real, that's not, and she, doesn't like emotional displays, doesn't like anyone to hug her in public, just very, very much a Virgo. And I'm always telling her to control her thoughts, that her thoughts and her mind and the negative thoughts can really impact her emotions, and that connection, that cognitive behavior therapy, I'm always trying to teach her those little things, because she's 17, and that mind body connection is so important for Virgos, because if we're in our head and we're stressed, it affects our stomach and our physical body. I think more than a lot of the other signs, honestly. So it's interesting.
Yeah, funnily you should say that, because I've always felt that where Pisces is emotionally sensitive, its polar opposite is physically sensitive. And
Yes.
I
Yes.
have always felt that with Virgo, that there's a physical sensitivity that is heightened
Yeah.
above perhaps other signs. But the other thing that just listening to you, I was smiling because you were talking about it being realistic, about them being realistic. Actually, I don't believe that that's what realism is.
Yeah.
Realism lies between optimism and pessimism. When
Yes.
you look at both sides, you don't immediately jump to the
Yes.
catastrophic conclusion,
Yes.
which is that's what pessimism is. And I
Yes.
think that for many people, and obviously Virgo is an easy one to
Yes.
um, to use to illustrate that. But Capricorn is right in there as well, and
Yes.
I know there's many a Scorpio who is guilty of this too.
Yes.
This idea that in order to be real, it has to be, you have to look at the downside, because
Yes.
otherwise it's not real. Well, actually, no, things have an upside as well. So
Yes.
let's get in the middle there and not just jump to what is actually pessimism. They don't mean the same thing, pessimism and realism. They are two
Yes.
different
I
things.
agree. It's so true with those three. I agree with you. It's just uncanny, just how and once they, know themselves, they realize what they're doing. When I talk to them, and they're like, well, I'm just trying to be practical. That's what they'll say. I'm just trying to be realistic. I'm like, yeah, but you don't have to be like in La La Land, like everything's roses and going to be fine. You can be balanced, right? and you should be balanced. You don't want to sway too far over here and you don't want to sway too far here, but being in the middle and being mindfulness. I talk a little bit about that in the book on the chapters on self-care. Being mindful, being in the present moment, just opening themselves up to things that are different. I think, a lot of the earth signs, and they struggle with this. I find that they get in the negative, pessimistic thought patterns a lot of the times, those earth signs.
I think actually I would say in polarity terms that the negatives
Yeah.
versus the positive signs are much more likely to err towards the side of pessimism.
Yes.
Um, and, and that's absolutely true, in the same way that the positive signs,
Yeah.
being more predisposed towards optimism, could also use a little bit of realism to balance things out. Uh,
Yes.
so I think that that's certainly true. Um, I like that you have tips for transformation as well. Why would you do that?
Yes. I feel like, in our lives, especially, with certain situations that happen, we're changed. When, I'm all about, looking at it, what is resilience? Resilience is a big word now in our culture, and there's tons of books about it. But when we go through hard times, we have everyone has their inner strengths and personality traits that help them overcome really difficult situations in life, whether it's loss of a loved one, divorce, tragedy. And after you get through those experiences, you're changed, you're transformed. And I believe that you can focus on transforming yourself, without having to go through those terrible experiences. You can work on, okay, these are my personality traits, these are my emotion, this is my emotional nature, these are things I want to do to grow. So to me, transformation is growth and focusing on things that can help you grow as a person and emotionally, and to become stronger. And to me, that's why I wanted to focus on transformation, because, you know, when I started out writing about the eighth house was one of my first books, just about the eighth house. It's all about rebirth and transformation. And I realized, you know, people that have eighth house planets, yes, they go through that their whole life, but everyone goes through this. Every sun sign goes through this. So I'm going to talk about that and broaden it, and really focus in to help every sign, not just eighth house and 12th house people. So that's kind of where this idea spurred, is to really focus on each sign and the basics. Like, my goal is to make astrology understandable to anyone, you know, where someone at my office that has no idea what astrology is, they just know their birth date, can pick up my book and read it and understand a little bit more about themselves and validate what they know and make them think, this is strange. Why is this so accurate? That's what I want to do. I want to open people's minds to the beauty and truth of astrology, because it's something that I've loved since I was 16. I picked up my first book and read about Virgo, and I was hooked. I'm like, why is this so accurate? I got to figure this out, you know. And as a psychology major, you know, that I loved everything that was about personality, and it just fit into my my career goals. And so I've always had it a part of my life and my normal everyday job as a social worker, but also you know, as a teacher. I just try to teach people this day to day. You know, people that know me, I talk in astrological terms. I mean, they think I'm weird. Some people might. I'm like, I don't care. I'm like, oh, you're, you know, you're a Leo. No. You know, and at work, I'll joke, you know, some of my coworkers, and they're like, oh my gosh, Carmen, you know. And so then they get interested though, because how did you know that? And they're like, and I'm like, well, it's your chart, you know, because I'll, you know, I'll get them to give me their info and I'll look at their chart, and they're like, that's so weird. That's like what happened. I'm like, yeah, I go, you know, it's very accurate. So they start wondering, you know, and a few of them may have bought my book and wanted to read it too, just to see, you know, what is she doing here? Because, you know, have a normal job, and I'm a normal person, but I have this other side of me that's very different. And a lot of people don't know that, because I keep it kind of private. You know, I'm out there. I mean, if they Google me, they'll find my books and stuff, but I don't share it, you know, like, hey, I wrote books. And I'm pretty private unless I know someone's open. And even it was interesting because my cousin had no idea that I was an astrologer and that I wrote astrology books. And she saw I had my Facebook author page, and I happened to post something, you know, of one of my book signings, and she was so shocked, and she wrote me, how did you not tell me? This is awesome, you know. And she's like, oh, loves it, and she's open to it and interested. And so she was like, you know, post on her wall about my book and one of my radio interviews, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So she tagged me, and I don't post a lot on my personal wall, you know, with people from high school and friends. I don't post what I'm doing. I do it on my, you know, my groups and my pages. But I'm getting more out there. It was kind of a learning lesson for me to get out of my comfort zone, you know, and that's one of my weaknesses is being a little bit private and secretive, you know, because I'm a 12th house sun and an 8th house moon, right? And so I'm like, okay, this is uncomfortable, but maybe I can do this, right? So
This
go
is
ahead and tag me. Go ahead, you know, it's like,
this
it's out there.
that many of us go through, being in the closet and then slowly daring to just look out and then eventually come out. So, and it was you talking about how at work, you know, you might speak to colleagues about this. It brought back memories of working as a special needs teacher, and I would work through the whole school because it wasn't a class, it was the whole school. So I knew all the children, and of course I knew all their birth dates. And I knew the children who stood out, shall we say, needed more care and attention for behavioral reasons, because I was often involved with them.
Yeah.
But I remember that, of course, every full moon was always a challenge. And all the teachers noticed that every full moon there was always something that was was a bit more dramatic than usual.
Yes.
And I would basically say, okay, well, you know, full moon coming up, look out for so and so, you know, just take extra care, you know. And it became a almost a ritual by the time I left the school,
Yeah.
that they come and check in with me, because inevitably, I was right every single month as to who was going to have the big tantrum, the big tears,
Yeah.
was going to end up needing extra support and help. And we just started looking at it. They started to look at it and think about putting things in place to perhaps support them at that time of stress, so that things weren't quite as dramatic.
I love that. I love that.
So it's one of those things that when we do begin to share just a little bit, even
Yes.
those who are incredibly skeptical begin to go, well, I don't really believe it, but let's just check. and and
Yeah.
that's a kind of dissonance where their experience is telling them one thing, but
Yes.
their cultural programming
Yes.
countering that. And so they're in a little bit of a dilemma,
Yeah.
and going, well, I don't really believe it, I don't understand it, but maybe there's something in it, so let's just let's go with it. And I think that's a nice role that we can play very gently,
Yes.
to help people who are, shall we say, semi-open.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I had a similar experience as a social worker when I worked in a youth service program back in the early, it was like 1999, 2000. And I worked with runaway teens, and we had a team of social workers, and every weekend when there was a full moon, more of them would end up at the police station. And I would tell them, guys, it's a full moon this weekend. And at first they would laugh at me. Oh, here she goes, Carmen. I'm like, no, you guys need to, I'm telling you, it's going to be busy. And every time they said, we don't understand this, but you're right. Is it a full moon? And they would ask me, because if they were on call, they would want to know, is it a full moon? And I would say it is. And we would always be like triple busy responding to the home, or, there were more arguments, more people at the police station, all of those things during the full moon. And they didn't quite know why I was right, but they listened. And I'm like, well, you can read about it. It's online, the full moon. And it's funny you bring it up, because I'm writing a new book. I just sent in my draft to Lelowin. It's moon signs, houses, and healing. And I have for each moon sign how the full moon affects them in each chapter. And I talk a little bit about the full moon in my personal story with bringing it into work and practically, educating people about how it does influence us. And police officers, nurses, people that I know that are medical field have more people come to the ER during the full moon, and all of these things. And so I love your story. It opens people's minds to, there's more things that are affecting us than we know. It's amazing. I love it.
Before I discovered astrology, it was my very late teens, and actually not long before discovering astrology, I did some voluntary work for the Addiction Research Foundation in Toronto. And one of my first jobs there was kind of front of house, where people would come in for methadone, but also if they were in trouble, if they needed help, etc.
Yeah.
And I remember when they were showing me around, and they said hardest times, Friday nights and full moons.
Oh,
Oh, that's interesting. Full moons, huh? I wonder why. And then, of course, not long after, I discovered astrology, and I knew exactly why. And now these were not people who were astrologers, but they did observe a phenomena. And the phenomena was that
yes.
at full moons, things got quite tense. And
Yes. Yes.
absolutely right. And
Yes.
it was a few years back now, that one of the police services here in the UK decided that they were going to put more police officers on duty at full moons,
Yeah.
because somebody observed the obvious. So
Yes.
so this is nice, because it's the portal of experience
Yes.
that makes us think and makes us question. And for some of us, of course, we want to discover more. And something else that I really like about your book was that you have a little section on how to support. So if you've got, whatever sign you've got in your life that you're living with or that you're friends with, there's a little section in there so that you understand them better. And the reason I like that is because, of course, one of the great gifts of astrology is that it gives us an insight into others that we would otherwise not have.
Yes, definitely. It helps us understand ourselves and other people and not take things so personally. I realized, not everyone is like me. I learned that from a young age. I was always very sensitive and emotional and empathic. And I knew I was different, like from a young age. Now I know when I see my chart why, but I didn't know at the time. I just knew people don't feel the way I do or behave or respond how I do. And I always wondered, and now I'm like, where I used to get my feelings hurt or maybe, withdraw. Now that I'm older, I'm like, I'm more wise. I'm like, I know why, it's their personality. And it really helped me understand other people. And I love it. It's my passion. I love astrology. I love teaching it to others and the basics. And, I want to make it, very practical. And I think part of it is, my North Node is in Scorpio and the third house. And that has been really hard, letting go of Taurus traits. And now I'm going to be 47. And I used to think, how am I ever going to be a Scorpio? There's no way, because I am so, I honestly didn't know how I'm going to do that because I have Scorpio friends and they're able just to cut things off, cut off their emotions. Like, nope, I'm done with that person. I'm moving on. I could not do that. And it was so, I don't know how they could do it. Now I've been through some things in my life and just coming through into my chart, into that North Node. I know that I feel more Scorpio now, which is really interesting. And so when I do charts for people, I always tell them, look at your North Node sign, and especially, and you need to learn and read everything about that sign because that's your destiny. You need to learn to become like that sign. And it's going to be very uncomfortable. And it's not how you really are inside, but you're meant to be that way. You're meant to embrace those traits, right? So I've always tried to move towards that Scorpio, and it's been hard, but the universe forces us into it if we don't go willingly. So I try to learn and become a Scorpio the best I can. I told my Scorpio friend, teach me, how do I do this? And she's like, you're too nice. She's like, so I'm learning, but I feel like writing is kind of now opened up for me. I mean, I've always loved to write, but something shifted, the past couple of years, and I just was writing all the time. And I had, these ideas, and now, I'm writing, and I have my first book out with a real publisher. So I'm really excited, and I'm kind of doing my node, I guess you could say, my third house energy, talking to you on here, very third house, writing, getting on the radio. I'm shy, I'm a Virgo. I have a 12th house sun, so I like to be behind the scenes. So coming out and doing this, it challenges me. I have to, get out of my comfort zone a little bit. And I was nervous, I'm nervous to do these interviews, but I'm glad I'm here.
Well, Scorpio is all about transformation. So it's perhaps you're finding your inner phoenix.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
And so I want to thank you very much, Carmen, for your time today and for picking up that resilience and courage that you need to get out of that comfort zone and come and speak to us.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me, and I appreciate it.
The book that we have been discussing is Sun Signs, Houses, and Healing. And I will be putting a link to that in the description box. And along with that will be your website, which is?
Yes, www, the number 8, the word and, the number 12, houses.com. 8and12houses.com.
Wonderful. And definitely will have that in the description box as well. So Carmen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you all for watching. And next time, we're going to stay with the topic of healing as we look at herbs and astrology. Do remember to check out my website if you want to learn more about astrology. That's in the description box as well. In particular, coming up in July, I have a course that is going to be looking at inner planet transits. So do have a look if you're interested and get in touch. Until next time, goodbye.